Oh, the official report said it was a defective well. Don't you believe that? Don't you believe that? Because they don't want you to know how strong we are, how powerful we are when we start to march and demand our freedom and integrity and to put these people in place. They don't want you to know what our power is. We held the place for 5 days. We set up negotiating tables. We had 50 hostages all throughout the yard. We set up, organized, all people were organized in defensive posture. Everybody had our homemade weapons ready for a confrontation. 5 days, every day. We ripped the commissary off and everybody ate kippers and cheese. But we still fed the hostages better than we fed ourselves. And then we made demands on the world. Well, many of the demands on the world were really reformist. And then a lot of us said, hey, we're not about reform. We don't want to make prisons comfortable. We want prisons to be abolished and tear them down brick by brick. Because we know that if you feed the people, if you meet the people's housing, their food, their clothing, their economic necessities in a society that meets their necessities, there would be no need for prisons. And that we know. We had many people. William Cutler, the famous civil rights attorney. Bobby Seals came in. We brought everybody in. We had ABC, CBC, CBS, and NBC, all the major networks and papers. They were allowed to come in, which is never going to happen again. We had live filming of what we were about, our negotiations. The whole world heard about Attica. The whole world thought it was the beginning of the revolution, the World War Revolution. It inspired the activities of Black September in overseas, in the Palestinian peoples. Everywhere around the world there were banners, Attica, Attica, Attica. After 5 days of negotiation, Nelson Rockefeller, the governor at that time, said, that's it, we're taking the president back. 13 years ago today. 38 years ago today. As we spent the night before, it was raining, drizzling. And as it was raining and drizzling, everyone knew something was going to happen the next day. So there we are the next morning. There was the trenches and people used their journals to defecate in big trenches that we dug out. The water get turned off, the power get turned off that morning. And on that morning, there was a helicopter that came flying over the prison. As it flew over the prison, it said, drop your arms and put your hands on top of your head and surrender to an officer and you will not be harmed. As it flew over, this Army helicopter flew over 2 or 3 times. On the 3rd time it came back around. All of a sudden, out of that helicopter came a huge barrel filled with CN4 gas. Boom! It just sprayed all over the place. Boom! It sprayed all over the place. It was condemned. It was poison. It was chemical warfare. They came back around and dropped 5 more canisters. On top of the catwalks, there was 1,000 state troopers with gas masks on. Guards from their own house with their own guns. They had the guards, the state troopers had every kind of weapon you could think of, including a 2.7 elephant gun, subtommy machine guns. All of a sudden, when they dropped the 3rd canister of gas, they started firing into the yard, and in a matter of 10 minutes, they had fired over 70,000 rounds of bullets into the yard. People were being shot in the head, in the guts. People were screaming for their lives. People were being massacred as they advanced themselves onto us and come running into that yard. They started shooting people with impunity. They killed 11 of their own guards that were in inmate clothing. There was a blood feast. It was a bloodbath. That's 38 years ago today. That's what happened in this history. People were forced to lie on the ground and crawl. They grabbed people and threw them inside the urinals, right there with their face in the shit and the piss, and they put their guns behind their head and they executed them. One guy, they pulled his pants down and stuck a shotgun up his ass and blew his balls out. This is who we're dealing with, people. This is who we're dealing with. This is who we're dealing with. People make you crawl on the floor, on the ground, run through hallways on glass, and beaten in their testicles and brains. The massacre was seen around the world. Eventually, 61 of us were indicted. I was indicted for killing a cop. Nelson Rockefeller was facing confirmation in 1973-74 as Vice President of the United States with Gerald Ford. He ordered the Attorney General's office to suppress any evidence going into a second grand jury for the murders that they committed. There was a guy by the name of Malcolm Bell, who was one of the Attica prosecutors. When he found this out, he refused and he became a whistleblower. He wrote a 60-page document to the New York Times. They sat on that document until after I was convicted. I went to jail with the stigma of being a cop killer. Every cop wanted to kill me inside of those prisons. I existed 6 more years in prisons with 7 attempts to murder me. They moved the death penalty to the unconstitutional, so I didn't go to the electric chair. But the point is that they had a commission, and the commission man found that Rockefeller man had suppressed his jury tampering. And eventually the seceding government, Hugh Carey, he granted a blanket amnesty to all the cops for the murders, including the guards that went in. He suspended the rest of the indictments against the rest of the Attica brothers. They gave me an executive clemency on the strength of a governor's recommendation. I should have been released. Well, when I went before the parole board for the first time in the history in New York, because the guy that was facing confirmation as the head of the parole board was threatened by state senators that if he released me, and a national strike by the prison guards union all across the country, that if they released me, that he wouldn't get confirmed for a 62,000-year post. Bam! Next thing you know, I was denied parole, given 2 more years. I became known as the only person convicted as a result of the Attica murder. 2 years later, I was released. And I'm here to talk to you today. I'm here to talk to you today. There was an incident that went on up in 100 Mile House where we were doing the Sundance. We were told that we were not wanted up there. They came in with guns in a truck and said that that we had to vacate the area while we were doing the Sundance, and they threatened to string up some red niggas that day. On that day, I basically told them, even if this is a month before Wolverine come up, I told them, I said, as far as I'm concerned, this wasn't a land title issue, but just now with that threat, we're going to turn this into the whole question of title in unsurrendered Indian land in British Columbia. And according to all of the meticulous and the great legal research done by Dr. Bruce Clark, that we did the whole analysis that BC was still under the treaties of the 1763 Royal Proclamation, the 1704 Queen Anne's. It even went back, the Queen Anne's decision, it even went back to the 1875 duty of disallowance, and it even went back as far back as the 1532 subliminal bills. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's a Vatican Papal Bull. And in that bull, basically was Bartholomew de las Casas asking the Pope Paul III, asked him to rescind the 1497 Tierra Nullis. Tierra Nullis was basically that the European nations had the right of divine right to go into any land and to seize that land in the name of Christianity, and murdered and killed over 100 million Indians died as a result of that. Bartholomew de las Casas was down there in Central America, and he was a priest that saw these murders, and he said, and he begged the Pope, please reverse this policy. It's just giving them the right to kill. And I'm watching 100,000 people murdered in cold blood.